Nope, we want that one. Live? Yep, it's live. All right. And so this you don't have to worry about so much because this is the this is capturing you for the stream.
Mhm.
So
Is it okay? Test, 1, 2, 3. No feedback for us? Does it sound okay so far? Is there any feedback?
it sounds good.
Good, okay, that's great. That's great. No one likes mic feedback. It's bad news bears.
All right, so we'll go back to mute for a bit until we kick off.
speaking. Thank you.
Got that, yep.
If you haven't done so already, we have documents up here and a sign-in sheet, so for those of you who may have wandered in and wandered past it, please come up and sign in and grab some.
We also have name tags too, if you don't mind. That would help me out. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, just a drop in.
I'm sorry?
Drop in.
That's fine. Just put your name on the back. No problem. Yes, so the women's restroom is down the hall, past the library entrance on the left. Yeah. Hello. Hi, thank you so much for coming. Oh, do you actually mind taking also a name? Thank you. Hello. How are you? Good. So we have a paper packet up here. We also have name tags if you don't mind. And then we have a sign-in as well. And please feel free to take a card for future consulting needs or whatever. We do a lot of consulting for free for accessibility. Hello. Yeah, the name tag. Thank you.
Green.
Now let's do it. Hi, how are you? How are you? Good. It's nice to see you in person. Yeah. Yes. I know, right? It's hard to block out the noise when you're learning at the desk. So thank you.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome. Sandy. Or I might just say Sandy because that eyes are so far over.
You're right. I like
If anybody
your,
tells you sand, it's not their fault.
I like your little bead necklace.
Oh, thanks. My daughter gives me things to wear and I have to wear them.
All right. It's very cute. Okay. Okay, hey Matt, do you think we can get started? Okay, well, I think we're probably going to get started. My name is Sandy. I am at the Center for Digital Accessibility and User Experience. My last name is Arendolkowski. Just focus on Sandy. It's a lot easier for everyone. So I am a user experience designer, but I got interested in accessibility because one thing led to another, and I was designing interfaces for a common scholarship application for students here at UW-Madison 4 years ago, and well, almost 5 years, and that's how I got interested in accessibility, because we wanted to follow standards and make sure that everyone could apply for scholarships. That's how it works with accessibility. Accessibility is very much something that you fall into, but it's integral to all of our lives, because we want to experience our information via multiple means, multiple sensory means, multiple modal means. And in the spirit of that, I wanted to offer you multiple modal ways of learning. So if you take a look at this URL, we're going to need it for the Word doc activity that we'll be doing later.
It tells me I should request permission.
Oh, it should be the share link. Let me.
I'm gonna go log in with Google Drive.
Let me share again.
You can change it to anyone with the link if you do just UW people.
Is that what
Doesn't
the,
have to be a fan.
You may have to go down to the apps, yeah.
okay,
It happens all the time.
And then click the change button right next to anyone at UW.
And at bottom.
does that one work okay?
That's fine, it comes down to the bottom, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, go, yeah.
The link that says can view only, you switch that over.
That's fine. Okay.
If, I don't know, are we supposed to edit or are we supposed to view it? I'm sorry.
For grabbing the Word doc, and it's, you download it and it's fine. That's totally fine. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to grab that URL again, actually. And this will be longer, but I'm going to post this here for now. Yeah. And then, Matt, you have access to this presentation.
It works now. Use the go.
Oh,
Use the go.
Oh, it did work. Oh, okay. That's great.
Right.
that's great. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. It was a good group effort. Okay, so in the spirit of offering multiple means of delivery, we have our content on here digitally. I want to give you the tools that you need in order to evangelize accessibility as well as learn on your own. And then we also have the paper packets here. And I'll go through those real quickly. So, so just so you know, we have a checklist here for what to look for when you are writing or editing content for accessibility. We also have information about captions. So these are just things for you to know that you have. This identifies why captions are so important for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And then we also have a WebAIM resource, which we'll look at WebAIM's website later in the training, but this is to give you sort of some cheats on where to find accessibility features within Word and PowerPoint. And then this is just for those of us who are working in InDesign. I actually don't work in InDesign very much, but just so you know, there is such a thing as accessibility within InDesign. And if you can, keep this on you and pass it to anyone you know or you run into who does work in InDesign, because the population on campus is small and kind of intertwined in all these different groups. So I just want to make sure that we have those things out there. Let's get started a little bit. So what we are here to learn about today is the difference between sort of what content barriers we're dealing with, how to understand our content from a structured perspective. It's kind of like if you have a yard and you put a fence around it, then people know for sure that that is your yard. It's similar with content. Basically, what we're going to learn about today is how to structure content in the easiest way we can in order to make accessibility and usability something more easy and viable for folks. So we'll learn about sort of the differences and the challenges in our content around usability versus accessibility and what that even means. But we'll also learn about visual, hearing, motor, cognitive impairments, and how folks use the web and how folks use content who are struggling with these different needs and abilities, and folks who have disabilities. But we also are using the same type of data ourselves. So when we're making things accessible and we're making things usable, we're doing it for everyone, because accessibility is about multimodal, multi-sensory ways of consuming information. So then we're also going to do testing and design and learn how to adjust our content. We're going to practice in a neutral space with a Word document. We're also going to do some testing on the WebAIM website, which webaim.org is a resource, and it's in your packet for really great accessibility guidance that's easy to understand. And then we're also going to get 30 minutes of open lab time at the very end to work on any content you want and work together. We also have folks in the back of the room. So Matt and Jess and Adam, if you can wave. And then we also have Maria. And those folks can answer questions as well. So when we sort of spin things up and get going, then during the lab session, folks can walk around and help. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. So diving into it, the difference between accessibility and usability and why this even matters is when you're making content and you're solving problems, or if issues arise with your content, knowing what type of issue you're looking at will help you solve the problem. So with accessibility, it's really about making your content perceivable, meaning I can tell that it's there, operable, meaning the user can manipulate it, understandable, meaning I walk away knowing what was being conveyed to me, and robust or reachable with my assistive technology. So if I'm a user who uses a Braille display or any kind of tool, a screen reader, where I need to identify and consume content in a way that is non-visual, then my content, if it's structured, can be reachable by those technologies. So with accessibility barriers, if the problem is I can't access it, whether or not I am someone with a disability, then you know that that's an accessibility barrier. And then you're looking for different ways to solve the problem. If it's a usability barrier, what this means is your user can access that content, but they may not understand really like how to get to the end goal. They can maybe understand what's being conveyed in the moment, but how to get to their goal may be mystifying for them, or they need help and it takes them multiple times to get to a successful endpoint. That's how you know that that's a usability barrier. And you handle solving those problems in slightly different ways. But the takeaway here is that in order to get to the usability, you need to have your content structured and accessible. Okay? Any questions about this so far? No. Okay. So accessibility and usability, it is for everyone. And according to the US Census from 2018, the most recent, is that nearly 1 in 5 people in the US are now identifying as having a disability. Part of it is because we have life-saving cures, we have advancements in medical and science, we're living longer, and a big part of it is that we're discovering disabilities that we didn't understand before. And we're understanding that we're all organic creatures, and that we aren't made, perfect, and we all have strengths and challenges and diverse capabilities and diverse needs as well. So we're also demanding more of our environment as a result of this new emergence of identity. So even, you're going to have users who may be experiencing accessibility barriers who don't themselves identify as a person with disabilities. And in the past, I have noticed that this is a mind-blowing concept for folks. But the reality is that while more people are reporting that they have a disability, less people who have disabilities are identifying themselves as having disabilities. In addition to that, when you are talking to folks and someone discloses that they have a disability, like I'm an out loud person personally, so I will tell you right now, you are surrounded by people with disabilities, challenges, various needs, diverse capabilities. I myself have a disability, and you probably wouldn't expect it. It's called a non-apparent disability. But I have an injury, or actually 5 to 6 injuries in my spine that cause me to change my behavior, and it causes pain on a daily basis, which changes how I cognitize, how I think. And that, to me, is more of a skill than a disability. So we have to understand that accessibility and usability, that these things are not black and white, and they aren't specific to a particular identity. And the best way to view these things is, and the easiest way, is that it's kind of a civil right. I mean, it's making these things accessible. It's for all of us. It's structuring our content. It increases our search engine optimization. So doing it is really, it's about all of us. So we're going to check out, I have some videos in here that help to sort of characterize the world that we are now in. I feel like in a way that perhaps we're so bombarded by our busy every day that we don't necessarily see. So here's an example of how we are demanding more as people from our environment. I'm hoping that the sound works. Okay, that's something. Hey, Matt, could you help out?
You jumped up.
Well.
I yield the floor.
Yeah, I don't know how this works.
Because I had turned on the projector mute.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking right there. That's his microphone. Teamwork makes the dream work. Bum, 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 bum. On your own. Thanks, buddy.
Okay.
I don't see where the volume is. That's that good. Actually, let's do this. Whoa, Nelly.
They're also like on the laptop, it's on the machine itself.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Right there.
This guy.
Thank you. Yeah, now it might be really super loud. But, okay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
But that's not the way I see it.
You can adjust the microphone.
People think that having a disability is a barrier. But that's not the way I see it. You can catch up with friends. You can capture a moment with your family.
One face, small face, focus lock.
And you can start the day bright and early. You can take a trip to somewhere new. You can concentrate on every word of the story.
A bird began to sing.
Jack opened his eyes.
You can take the long way home. Or edit a film like this one. When technology is designed for everyone, it lets anyone do what they love, including me.
So, as a people, we are looking for ways that we can structure our content so that perceivability, operability, understandability, and the ability to reach content with our assistive technologies is possible, and not only possible, but optimized. So keeping in mind this premise, let's approach how to actually do it. It may feel like more work, but in reality, you're just structuring your content, formatting your content, and formatting it beyond just the visual need, but also the data need. So all the content has a purpose. It has semantic structure. That's the point. So what do you have to think about when you're building your content for accessibility? Making it structured so that the context of what that content is and its relationship to the rest of the page is identifiable. Each piece of content on a single page is what you're thinking more about rather than the whole document exclusively. So we want to be asking ourselves whenever we write anything, let's say a sentence or a paragraph, or if I was talking to developers, it's the same thing I would say when you're building component pieces on an interface. If you're building website pieces, then I would say, what is this thing that you're building or writing? What does it do? If it's a link, you click on it, right? Where is it going to take me? What does this do? What can I expect before I do this? And what is its relationship to everything else on the page? So we're going to dig into how to actually do that.
Clear layout and design. Poor layout can be very frustrating. And the same applies to the web. Good design involves good layout, and that means a better user experience. This includes clear headings, navigation bars, and consistent styling. Any web user will get frustrated with bad layout and design. Complex layouts also make finding information difficult or impossible for people with visual disabilities. And they are confusing for people with cognitive and learning disabilities who need clarity and consistency of the presentation. Bad design also impacts anyone who isn't particularly confident around computers.
So how do we structure our content? We think about the layout and the design. And really, when you're writing content, the design does start with the writing. You know, we don't want to skip 50 steps ahead to the way this thing is going to look or how it's laid out. Let's think about the writing first. Let's get down to the atomic level, which is what your language is like. So we work at a university. We're talking to very intelligent people, right? But no one wants to work through how they're reading. They want to spend that cognitive labor, that thinking time, creatively thinking about the neat ideas that you are passing to them. You want them to grapple with those ideas. You don't want them to grapple with the language, because that's a barrier then to reaching those neat ideas. Well, I'm here now to tell you that it's possible to bypass all of that, to liberate ourselves from the expectation of having to wade through strenuous language, and instead write in plain language, but you're writing about complicated creative ideas. So plainlanguage.gov is a fantastic resource for examples. They are talking about like military examples, really tough stuff, and they're needing to break it down to plain language. So if military can do it, we can absolutely do it. So when you're communicating, think about communicating your complicated ideas inclusively in plain language. And what this means is you keep it simple. You keep it active. Your language is straightforward and active in that so-and-so is not going to potentially do something. No, they will be doing something. Or I am taking this step. Or if you're making instructions, don't be afraid to say you. You are taking this next step, or you should take this next step. You has been pulled out of our language too many times in our documentation. It's important that we engage people, and the way to do that is by engaging them directly. So keeping your language uncomplicated and simple actually raises the tide in the room so that all boats rise. Makes people feel smarter because they don't have to wade through your content. They are not having to wade through jargon and self-identify it. If you're using jargon or you're using acronyms, you're defining those things at least once, if not multiple times in the content, so that people don't have to climb back up to the top of a document or a web page to understand what this thing is. So imagine that you're talking to a friend and you're trying to explain something to them. Are you going to talk over their head, or do you care about them successfully understanding the ideas? That's how you write plain language, very much like you're talking to a friend. So you're including in context the meaning of any jargon, any acronym. You're using active voice and simplified language. So for example, photosynthesis is the process by which green plants and some other organisms use sunlight to synthesize food. That actually is a much simpler way to say the photosynthesis definition that I found online. But an even simpler way to put it that is just as true is green plants and other living things use sunlight to make food, called photosynthesis. Just like keep it very simple. Because simple is what gets us all there at the same time. And we all want to get there.
Understandable content. Instead of saying, to postulate a conceit more irksome than being addressed in sesquipedalian syntax is adamantine, it is better to say, being spoken to in unnecessarily long and complicated language is a pain. Yet many websites lack structuring, using headings, lists, and separation. Or they use overly complex language, jargon, and unexplained acronyms. It makes them difficult and unappealing to use for many people, including non-native speakers, and makes them unusable for people with cognitive and learning disabilities.
So once we have written our content in plain language, we can move on to the design process by thinking about our structure, our headings, our layout. When you're building content, headings is integral to your content, and it's not just a visual thing. If we can think about seeing in a different way, seeing is not a physiological thing in having anything to do with your eyes. Seeing is about conceiving. It's a conceptual thing, okay? So if you're writing content, for example, headings, you are creating a structure. You're putting fences around your yards to identify what this thing is, so it's not free floating in space. So when you're building your headings, you use heading styles. We're going to work in Word, and we're also going to test a web page, and I'll show you how headings can be characterized in these two different places. Don't worry about the platforms right now. Just worry about the guidance. What do I have to think about? I have to think about plain language, and I have to think about headings. I know how to do headings. It's very easy. You do it all the time. You just don't necessarily realize that you're doing it, and you may only be halfway doing it right now. Okay? So we'll get there. Yes? So
I battle with that all the time because in Microsoft Word there's also an entry called title. So to me, it makes sense to have title, and then for each great idea, you have H1 and then H2, H3, H4, and then another H1, and that makes more sense to me.
Yep.
So why do they have title and then they contradict themselves?
Because title is an old print carryover. So if you are printing the document, you can use either title or H1 if you're not going to post this to the web at all. But if this is going to be read in a digital way, then H1 is your title and you don't need a title at all. So
I
when,
understand that, but then
yeah,
the
it's
way-
confusing, right?
The way it looks in Word, if you click on title, you have a beautiful centered, large bold title, and then H1 is kind of a
Mhm.
little paragraph on the side. So
Yeah.
thanks for that, because I
Yes,
didn't know it came from the
absolutely.
printing, but I always got confused with that in particular.
So when you're building your headings in your content, whether you're building it in HTML or you're building it in a Word document or you're doing this in PDF, your heading needs to be tagged as an H1 or a heading 1 as in Word. And they have style panes, but we'll go through that in the activity, but you're adjusting the size, the weight, meaning how bold it is, as you like it, centering that text. And what you do is you modify the style and you update it so that the styling is wrapped in with the heading, and that's structuring the content. So you can rely on Word's presets and click on that heading level and get what you get, or you can adjust it to fit your visual needs. But as long as the context is there and the relationship is there in the way that the content is structured by selecting heading and updating the style to that heading,
Yeah, but if
that's how you
if
can make it
number
accessible.
them, like I like to have 1 and 1.1 and 1.2. So
Yeah, that's
all
not
the
enough.
document could be like 50 pages and everything is 1 point something.
Yeah.
You never get to a break.
And you can't do that exclusively. So you can put numbering, you can number your sections in your document, but that it does not replace the need for your heading levels in the styling. Because what that does is that builds in the heading level data into the HTML behind Word. So behind whatever you're building, be it a PDF or HTML, or you're building a PowerPoint, or you're building a Word doc, there's HTML behind that, whether you can see it or not. So if I'm building HTML, I know that's what I'm manipulating. That's the structured data. That's the structure, is that HTML. But in Word doc and everything, you don't have to be a programmer. This is it's building it behind the scenes for you. Did you have something to say?
Well, because that HTML is a title page also, as a title on the page.
That's a different section of the code. That's actually, yeah, that's actually for the whole document and not in the body content. And Word also has that in the property settings for the document. So they are separate things, although it is confusing that it's sitting right there. It absolutely is. So all headings and links and buttons, we'll get to those, have to be unique and contextual. So you can't have repeat headings throughout your document. You have your H1 with your heading levels 2, 3, 4, 5, you're nesting. Just like when you're writing an outline in high school, you know, it's the same thing, only you're doing this with your headings instead of like the outline numbers, as what is Jean was saying? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's instead of putting the section numbers on your content, you're actually building it behind the scenes using the heading stylings that Word offers, or that is already baked into your PowerPoint slide templates. So semantic structure through this styling takes your plain language, breaks them into heading structure, heading sections, and as long as your content is unique and you don't have repeat headings, and you use the right nesting, meaning you have one heading level 1 and then you have your heading level 2, and then underneath that, just like when you're writing an outline, you have your 2, 3, 4, and you can only have one H1 in the document, which we'll go through in the activity. And after that, your highest section level is heading level 2. Does this make some sense so far? It'll make more sense when we get hands-on, but okay.
Can you, sorry, could you go back to the page you were just on?
Yes.
The last bullet point, what specifically is that referring to?
So the line breaks, yep, are in text formatting as well. And what that means, and the reason why I put it in heading levels is because people they offend the line break piece most often when they're building headings. So when you're looking at your document, you want it to breathe a little bit. You want to put in white space, right? And what we often find ourselves doing is hitting enter a bunch of times between our heading sections. And instead of doing that, what you want to do is format your text. So in the like whatever platform you're in, whether you're using WordPress or you're using Word or you're using PowerPoint, you don't want to hit enter a bunch of times. You instead want to highlight your text and go into the formatting settings of whatever that platform is and add line spacing. So all these things are very simple, each individual things that you do, but we just don't think about them because we're so used to just like throwing things on a page, worrying about how it's written, and not necessarily thinking about how the data is structured. And what I'm helping you do today is structure that data using these tools that you've seen every day.
So is that different than doing like a page break? Where you hit, I don't know, like sometimes you can hit like the command and the return and then it puts you to the next page.
That page break is just as good. It does take you to the next page, but it enters spacing in the data behind the scenes.
So that would be,
that would be okay. Yeah. And what the difference is when a user who's using a screen reader, for example, is navigating through your content, they're not getting stuck at every line break. They're skipping that white space because you've put it in the HTML and they don't have to like pass through it. They skip to the next piece of content and they're happy that way.
I have a question, like, let's say you've got a website called My Restaurant, and it's got a bunch of pages, home, about, menu. So I'm on the About page. So is the H1 My Restaurant, and then About is an H2? Or since that's the About page, does About become the H1?
That is an awesome question. So on a home, like every single page needs an H1. Your H1 is in practice what we're used to knowing as our title. The thing is the title of the past is coming from print history, which is valid. It has its uses because you're reading it in print. But in the digital world, H1 is our new title. And the title is unless you're doing something exclusively for print, title is going to be going away. So title in HTML means something different than title in Word. So in your web page, every single page, your home page included, needs to have an H1, and the name of your website ends up being that landmark link, like your icon up there. You can have two H1s on the home page if you have them both, but usually that ends up being like a landmark link in the navigation, not as part of the body of the page. So H1 is in the body of the page.
Okay, so
same
if I
with
have
Word,
an About
same
page, About is the H1.
Yeah, you would have it in the navigation, which you then have it twice, right? It's in the navigation, but the name of the page, that heading needs to be there. Yeah, and you don't have to, it doesn't have to be about, it can be about such and so. Yes, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to point out that if you are familiar with the theme or maybe you're a WishClub customer, on the homepage of your site, the H1 is just hidden. It's still there, but as soon as you select it as like a front page, it's just like hidden from you cited users. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Jenna. And Jenna is another one that is.
Think that like there's no H1 on your WishClub sites or UWP sites.
Yeah.
It's still in them.
Can you reiterate the questions?
Yes, thank you.
Just because that comment.
Yeah, so so the question was, if you are building a web page, is the H1 if you're building an about web page, is the H1 your is it about? And about is in your navigation, as well as you need a top level heading for each page. It doesn't have to be literally about, it can be about whatever your organizational name is. Okay? All right, thanks for that feedback. I still sometimes forget to say the questions. Okay, so, we didn't get to so unique links and buttons. So we have actually gone over the hardest part. The hardest part is understanding like the framework behind this thing, structuring your data. The headings is the most persnickety piece for people, that and tables. Links and buttons are very similar to headings in that you have to have unique language for your links and buttons, and they need to be contextual. So for headings, links, buttons, people who cannot see your content, they use those pieces of content to climb up and down your document, kind of like a ladder. So when you're looking at your document, your headings and your links and your buttons are like steps on a ladder for people to climb up and down your content. And that's why it's so important for each rung to be unique so that people can find it. They can discover the beginning and the end, and they can find the middle. So with button language, we want to be descriptive. You're submitting, and if you are submitting a timesheet, you're on a timesheet, you know you're submitting a timesheet, but submitting rather than next, just as contextual as you can be with your links, and you're more often building links in document content. You can't say read more or click here. The best thing to do is whatever it is that this person is going to when they click on this link, that is your link text. Where am I going? Okay. Any questions so far? Yes, please, Jess.
We have one from someone who's that they were but regarding headers and texting, is it okay to put section breaks in to create a space between the header and the text? Yeah.
So the question was, is it okay to put space in between the heading and the text in a document?
A section break, use section break in order to create that space.
You would actually use line spacing. You don't want to create a new section for content between the heading and the content of that heading are parent-child related. If you separate them, then the child is missing. And that's very much the reading experience. That is both the metaphor and the reading experience for the user. Does that help?
Well, and I kind of wonder part of that is I always had this with these web-based stuff. I just want to increase a little more white space. And it seems like the devil trying to get a paragraph tag to just give me a little extra white space. So I mean, is there an easy, appropriate way of managing that?
So I don't want to overwhelm folks,
Okay.
but the HTML accessible development hackathon we'll be doing in May. We could, if you can bring it there, I also can meet with you separately. Yeah.
That question also gets into user experience, which is another area of sort of training that we want to get. Good UX, good contents, user-centered content strategies. That
Large links, buttons, and
right now, a lot of what we're doing right now is kind of this buildup of a campus user-centered content strategy for all of you. So those kind of questions get into not only accessibility but also just UX design in general. So.
And just to repeat the question too, I'm not sure if I had, but like getting the padding in HTML with your paragraph tags to separate between paragraphs. That is a CSS question rather than an HTML question, and one that we can cover. We're going to be doing Accessible Development Hackathon in May through the App Design Review Brown Bags, and we'll be sending that information out to folks. Okay, so talking about links and buttons and controls, but this is getting more into website content, but it's good to know these.
Controls. Trying to hit a small target requires lots of effort. Many websites and applications try to thread the needle. But on the web, we can make areas for clicking and tapping larger and easier to use, which is handy on mobile devices, especially when we might be moving around at the time, which is critical for people with reduced dexterity.
So something to keep in mind when you're building your content, you actually have more control over that space around the link that folks have to click on than you think. So if you make really short link text, then that is a really small affordance for people to be able to click on that link and go to where you're trying to get them to go. So Just make sure that you give them the context that they need. Don't be shy about having a little bit longer link text, and then them clicking on there, actually, it makes it easier for them. Okay, so images. And now we're going to get into images, videos, audio. So those other multi-sensory spaces. So now that we know that we need plain language, we need to be inclusive about how we build our headings so that it's structured. We're putting fences around our yards. And we know that we need to have unique button text and link text. I mean, more in terms of link text, but you guys are doing some button stuff on WordPress too. Now we're thinking about how do we translate visual designs, visual images to folks who may not be seeing with their eyes, but want to still be able to conceptualize just like everybody else. So your images are relevant. If you are putting them on your website or you're putting them in your document content, don't ever say out loud that this is just decoration, because A, that is demoralizing to the content you're building. You're putting it there for a reason. And B, it also means, well, even if it is decoration, why don't I want to see decoration? You get to see decoration. You know what I mean? So it's important to think universally about the content that you're putting on, no matter what content you're putting on. So if you're doing an image, why are you putting it here? What is the visual data that you're getting out of this? I recommend an A-B formula. And what that formula is A, I want to know what is in this image. Just describe the image. You don't need to be perfect, okay? Give them your best shot. Don't worry that your alt text is wrong. No alt text is what's wrong, okay? So just describe the image. And then B, why is this image here? What is the emotional, evocative thing that it's doing for you? Or what is the context of this image to everything else? Okay, and we'll get to practice that in the activity. But A, describe what's in the image. B, why is it here? Once again, we're thinking to ourselves, what is this thing? What is it supposed to be doing? Well, it's an image. We know that. The screen reader will tell you that. You won't need to put it in your alt text, okay? And then what's its relationship to the rest of the page? That's what you would put in your alt text. What is this thing and what's its relationship?
Do you apply these to those images of hero that are just decorative at the top of anything?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know what I'm talking about?
all that stuff has alt text, and it has the capacity to have alt text, yes. Unless you're talking about a red block, and it's not like an image or a photo, you know what I mean? You're just like, it's a red block. Well, yeah, then that's truly, that's not even decorative, that's part of the design, and that shouldn't even register as an image. That should just be baked into the CSS.
If the red block is a JPEG, then it's an image.
Yeah,
And
ideally.
we import stuff in WhiskWeb where, there's a requirement to have the alt text.
Yeah.
It's good for most part, but then this will be an image that has no alt text, but they cannot, someone visually impaired would not be able to know that there's no alt text because it's just a block of red.
Exactly, because too often people don't put alt text in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're talking about WordPress, yeah, if you're talking about WordPress, if you're putting in a block of red, ideally that would be in your CSS, not in your HTML, so that solves that. You won't, users come in contact with the content that's in your
most
HTML.
of casual users will have no idea how to make a block of red in CSS, and they will put a blank PNG.
That's true, but that's why we're having these trainings. Yes. Yes. So you want to, when you're putting in images, those images are going to register to a screen reader. And what that image is should be conveyed. If you're in Word, there's a checkbox for decoration. Because in Word, you can't CSS code in your red block design. You know what I mean? So there is a setting for that. But in other like content, if it has any content in it, you have to put in a alt text.
About Word as a means to creating a HTML?
No, it's that these accessibility guidelines are agnostic across platform. So regardless of what platform you're in, these are the things you have to worry about. And then the hard part is not this. Actually, the hard part is figuring out how to get that persnickety technology to do the things that you want it to do. Yes, yes. But if you know what is accessible data structure, then that is more than half the battle. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Okay. So yes, go ahead,
Sorry,
Teresa.
last question about alternative text. Are you gonna get into, like the maximum, character limit for alternative text? Or?
No, because, and your question was, I'm sorry, I didn't repeat the other one. So, so Teresa's question was the maximum size of alternative text. You're not going to butt up against, like, you really don't need more than a phrase most times, or a sentence potentially with a comma if you're describing what's in the picture, and then that A-B formula of what's its context. It used to be that alt text, there was pressure for alt text to be much shorter. But you know what? You're not doing anyone any favors by making it that much shorter. And who is asking for it to be that much shorter?
Right.
I think,
have an idea
yeah.
what the capacity of the screen reader, that's why.
Yeah, no, people want to know what the information is from this image, so give it to them. Yeah, please.
What in the world do people do with like complex infographics?
You know, I'm glad that you asked that. So complex infographics, that data does not belong in alternative text. That's everyone wants to see the descriptors and the context around the infographic. So first of all, infographics should never be complex. But yeah, so so the data in the infographic, you know, the question being, how do we accessibly communicate infographics, is really what we should be zooming out and asking. Infographics are great for disseminating 1 to at most 3 pieces of data, but really that's like you're hitting the belt then. Really 1 or 2 main messages should be coming out of those infographics. If you have more to say, then you might need more infographics, but like one infographic contained should have 1 or 2 main messages, and those should come with a summary or a legend. Those are fancy words for saying basically there's a caption that everyone can see, both visually and conceptually, and that is not buried in your alternative text. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Yes, please.
If you're building a website in foreign language, like your alt text has to be in our language or English?
When you are building websites in a foreign language, the question was, does it need to be in these other languages? Yes, they do. So if you have a tool that translates, it translates all the data. It should translate all the data. If you are making copies, then you would translate everything, because all of that is the data baked into the document. Yes, please.
You have an infographic.
Yes.
And you put in a detailed caption that's visible on the page to everyone. What is kind of the recommended language to be in alt text then? Is it to say, this is a infographic and kind of describe the, like you said, the 1 to 2 main points, and then the legend or something?
What I would do is
detailed caption versus alt text.
So this is less about compliance and more of the art of alt text. You, by putting in alt text and by giving it a shot and giving it the old college try, you're doing it right, because you're doing something, okay? So don't worry less about doing things wrong, and step back and look at the context of the full component piece of the infographic, the caption, the alt text, and its relationship to each other, okay? And so that alt text will likely be the name of the infographic, and identifying that details are below, saying things in your documents. And again, that question was, how do you structure your infographic captions and alt text? What goes in that alt text? The key thing is that you look at what the story that is being told in these 3 pieces of content, and you unify them by saying, this infographic has these details below. you know, you identify what the infographic is and that the details are below, because
You wouldn't want to repeat them.
no, because then it's clutter to the audio user is reading just like visual users read. The difference is they scan and flip through from an audio perspective, like they use their hearing instead.
So I want to give a time check here just because.
Yes.
Alt text is a beast of a topic.
It is a beast.
So, I mean, if you have more questions, please make use of the various ways that we have for you to leave those questions with us.
Yeah.
But I do want to keep
Thank
saying
you.
moving because we have a lot of content to get through. So,
Thank you.
sorry.
No, I really appreciate the
I've got lots
questions.
of questions coming in through the stream as
Yes.
well. We want to.
Okay, so video captions and audio transcription. You don't want to get those things mixed up, okay? What do you have to have? If you have a video, you need to have a caption. You can also have transcript with it if you want. Like, so if you have a video, maybe you shot a video and you have a transcript of what you actually read, that actually is the cleanest way to do things, much recommended. So if you're filming your own video, you're reading from a transcript and then you publish that transcript, but you also need to caption. So captioning is really important. That's why I included the reasoning behind captions in the documentation here, and I won't like go through that right now, but captions are important, and the main reason for it is because if you have a transcript over here and it's not a live transcript where the user has to find their place, they're looking here, they're looking there, they're not going to be able to get the same equitable experience as they would if you have the captions right in the video, and that's why captions are so important. And fear not, UW-Madison is trying to find an easier way for campus to get on the caption bandwagon. So we'll stick a pin in that, but just so that you know how to do captions in terms of what is needed in it. You don't have to know yourself how to literally go in there and make captions happen. You just need to be able to look at your captions, play a video, and see that those captions have these these 5 main things, but really 4 of it matters the most. So it's dialogue, but if it only has dialogue, then it's a subtitle. It's not a caption, okay? So dialogue, who is speaking? That's a big deal because the user needs to know who's talking. It needs to have punctuation. Absolutely. Just like when you're reading from a document, you should have the same punctuation in your captions. If it's stream of consciousness, like often subtitles are, and you have no punctuation, that is like really disorienting for people. The vocal and emotional tone and the ambient sound included in the caption, especially if those are factors in the content as a whole. So if the actor is responding to a sound off screen and that's not characterized in the caption, then that user is going to lose that content and not have an equitable experience. Compliance is about equitable experiences, but also it's the right thing to do. Any questions about captions so far? Okay, good news. Transcripts need to have the same thing. So you don't have to learn anything new there. So the big difference is just the basic format, whereas captions are in captions in the video, transcripts are flat objects that are uploaded. Or if you have a fancy tool that does active transcripts, those are transcripts that you upload and then the artificial intelligence or the timing that you've set up with that file follows the words on the transcript, but you don't have to know how to do any of that. You just need to know what the difference is, okay? So with your transcripts, once again, it's the dialogue, it's the punctuation, it's who's talking, it's the vocal tone, it's the ambient sound. Any questions about that so far? Okay. So just as a quick heads up, for those of us that deal with forms, I don't know how many folks in this group deal with forms. I mean, do you guys make forms? Oh, okay. See, that was a wild guess me throwing this in here. So with forms, the key thing that you have to remember is anytime you're asking someone to enter something into an input field, you have to have a label. Placeholder text is not a label. You have to have a label. You can also have placeholder text, but the 2 required elements to any form, or else it's not a form, it's just a random thing you've passed to people, is a label with an input. If you don't have those two things, it's not a form anymore, okay? And then inside the input or around the input, you can have placeholder text. And what placeholder text is it's hint text. It's like, here's an example of how to put in, like what phone number format we're looking for, or here's an example. That's placeholder text, okay? Any questions about form content?
I love it there. What about the note, this might be more just form design, but what about the notion of retaining the content? My most recent use of a form online was that it did not keep, and I couldn't print it out, and at some point I was just stuck having to fill out this really intricate form, and there was no way to save it as items. That's not really accessibility per se, that's more just other form stuff.
No, I mean, it's, that definitely would fall under usability because a lot of people want to keep copies of the stuff that they do. Yeah. Or send me an email, what did I tell you? Yeah, I mean, those are definitely usability aspects. And the question was, what do you do if you have content that's put into a form and that content doesn't save? What is that? And it's good to know what is a usability problem and what is an accessibility problem there, because one is against the law, you know? I mean, if it's not accessible and it doesn't get fixed on time, there's legal ramifications around it. That's why it's important to know the difference between these things. But it's also like, how do I fix this? That's like, you look to usability tactics for fixing those things, which we will be having usability training. User research is coming up in April. Yes, and that's where it all starts. That's where usability begins. Okay, so we are at 2 o'clock. This goes till 3, right? I can't believe it, but I'm actually on time. Okay, so does anyone need a break? No? You guys want to keep going? Is this okay so far? I mean, this is the first run of this session. So, like, if things stink or need to change, you guys tell me because I want to change it, okay? All right, so testing tactics for accessibility. Don't be intimidated. That's my first advice, okay? You know now, I mean, like, after having gone through the structuring of your content, the training for that, how hard did that seem to you? I mean, say something. Tell me you're alive. Like, how hard did that seem?
Well, it didn't seem so hard, except for, like, for example, the video. It's not a trivial thing to put subtitles in your video.
Right. Well, captions, right? You don't have to know how to do this stuff yourself. The key thing is the awareness of whether there's captions in there and whether those captions look correct. If you don't know those things, then auto captions can trick you into thinking that you have compliance happening here. And if you don't know the difference, then you can get caught flat-footed. And the university is working on resources to make captions happen. So it's not a question necessarily of being able to build those yourself at this time. You just need to know if you have them.
You mentioned auto caption, so that's automated voice recognition applied to your video.
Yeah, like, so YouTube, you can turn on auto captions. It'll caption, but we also call those craptions because they aren't actually captions. They're something else.
Especially if you
Yeah.
switch language.
And like, if you take that content that shows up in the caption and it's inaccurate, you throw it in a web page, it's like, like, our organization has this on the web page and it's inaccurate, then it's much, much scarier. But we shouldn't be discriminating based on what channels our content is showing. We want it to be accurate across the board, right?
But I assume part of the question is this doesn't happen magically. It's going to take resources. It's going to take time.
Yes, so you said you don't have to do it yourself, but there's not always money to pay for these things.
Yes, but the point of this training is that we're disseminating the information so that you're wise. You know what you have here. You know whether or not you can put this video in class, or if you need to find something that has a caption, or if you have to use this because you don't have anything else. You know, hey, these aren't real captions. I need to reach out to my class and say, hey, I have a video here, but there aren't captions in here. It's not accessible. Does anyone need me to set something up? You know, I mean, invite accommodation, because those things are going to happen whether or not you invite them, and it's better to be prepared. But this training is just like making you savvy, and then teaching you how to structure your content. Okay, so manual testing and automated testing is what we do for accessibility. Automated testing, we run a program and it tests your website or it tests your Word doc in the native platform. And so looking for the automated testing tools that are at your disposal, like that's the point of this training, to make you aware that those exist. Yes?
Can you tell us what Wave is?
Yeah,
I
we
got an
will.
email last week about, oh, we're gonna have this thing about Wave, but never at any time did anybody say what that was.
Oh, okay.
And so to be true to what you said earlier, you should say what any acronym is.
Yep. Yes, we're not there yet. Okay. Okay. So in your testing, you have to be aware that there is automated testing and that there is manual testing that you do yourself. And the manual testing, you use your own judgment to test the content that's in your page. And I am giving you a checklist for that, and we'll be doing an activity for that. But with automated testing, there's different tools out there. I'm going to offer you a tool possibility, but it's not going to work with everything, and you don't have to use this particular one. You might find something better. If you're working in Word, there's an accessibility checker that you would use. If you're working in PowerPoint, Microsoft offers accessibility checkers in each of its platforms. So you just have to know to look for it, because the very first thing you do is automated testing when you're doing accessibility testing. Automated and then manual. Okay, so automated testing will catch the simple things, so you don't have to hunt for them. And then the manual testing is like, okay, let's dig in here and just make sure I did everything I needed to do. Okay, so now we're going to jump into Wave. WebAIM, as I mentioned before, is the name of an organization that is philanthropic, and they do great, really plain language accessibility guidance. The Wave tool is the link that I sent out to you. It is a Chrome and Firefox extension. So if you want to use that one for web pages, it is flat and easy. I definitely recommend it. I use it myself. You would want to install that in your browser if you haven't already. And we're going to use that with WebAIM website to see what an accessible website looks like.
But what does WAVE mean? Because I found this email, it's called Wave Educational Fund, so it's probably not the same thing.
It's the
Wave Action Meeting.
It is the WebAIM Wave Accessibility Checker, the link that was sent.
What does WAVE mean?
Oh.
Web Accessibility something?
I'm not sure. I mean, that's the name of their free tool.
That's the idea.
So I just use the tool. Yeah. It's a browser extension. It shows up the results of your accessibility testing on the left-hand side. Okay, and then when we dig into manual testing, we'll be looking at responsive testing for mobile resolution screen sizes. We'll be looking at magnification testing, which is called reflow. You don't have to remember necessarily that reflow is a term. It's kind of a jargon. Magnifying to 400% and making sure that your elements, like your content, doesn't clash together is the important part. And then keyboard testing we'll be doing, as well as contrast testing and screen reader testing. So we're going to be digging into that. So the next thing we want to do is navigate. We're going to get into the demo and the lab portion of our time here now. We want to go into the WebAIM website. And then we actually don't, I was planning on using my computer, so I'm going to grab the Wave Chrome extension. That's what we're using. Okay, great. So with Wave, what that is it's just a web accessibility automated testing tool. And what it does is it looks at the HTML code in the website. It's a little messy because we have it on the projector resolution, so I apologize for that. But if you go to the WebAIM website and you initiate Wave, you'll see errors on the left-hand side. Yeah, you can definitely, you don't have to go to the WebAIM website. You can go to your website too and put this in. So the problem is I'm just running into
The link from the email that was sent by Matt looks like this.
yes, that is correct.
But
And
I
there's
didn't have to install anything to get it.
right. So I'm sorry. So there's a browser extension at the very top of that page. And there's Firefox and Chrome. I'll include more detail definitely in the next communication I send, which I can do a follow-up after this training to kind of help folks get the right tools.
If anyone needs assistance getting the tool up, Adam and I are here to come around.
Yeah, I think definitely if you can come down and help over here.
Raise your hand if you do need any assistance.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to try a different website. I'm just going to go to this website. Just see if I can get. There we go. Okay, so this is what Wave looks like. When you're doing automated testing is only about 25% of the testing that you need to do. The rest is manual testing, which is why we have these guidelines so that you're building your content accessible from the beginning with plain language and headings and unique links, etc. So when you kick off Wave, you click on the browser extension and then you click on the flag to be able to see what the alerts are. The errors are in red and show up at the top. So this summary of 0 errors, I actually happened upon a more accessible website. But if you do have errors, you click on the little flag and that shows you the errors. And it'll be the same things we talked about here today. It'll be heading levels missing. It'll be alternative text. It'll be link text that isn't in a lists that aren't in a structure, or link text that isn't unique and repeating. Those are the very simple things that are picked up during automated testing. During manual testing, you're looking for things like, is my nesting order correct in my headings? So having a heading level 1, every page should have at least a heading level 1. If you have heading level 2, 3, 4, and the, let me just go over here, and the headings are out of order, or that they aren't nested properly, that's out of order, then you would be able to see the heading levels here. So in this case, we have the heading level 1, and we go to heading level 3, the heading level 2 is missing. So that's an example of where the heading levels got messed up on this page. And you would go in and insert or change tacos by the 2s to a heading level 2. Okay, so automated testing is seriously just this easy, or it should be. If you're dealing with a tool that's more difficult than this, throw the tool out, do something different. Automated testing really is just this easy. And then going through and manual testing, you're making sure that you, in your data, that you actually did everything that's on this checklist right here. And this checklist is everything we just talked about today. Okay? So, so the next thing we're going to do is, has anybody been able to find the screen readers on their computers or install NVDA, depending on what type of computer you have, from the email we sent? Okay, the rest has not done screen reader install. That's fine. I mean, You don't necessarily need to install a screen reader if you have a Mac. If you have a Mac, you have VoiceOver, and hitting Control F5 will initiate the screen reader. If you have a PC, then I recommend installing NVDA. And NVDA is a free screen reader tool that, and it's also linked in the presentation, that allows you to read your page like via audio versus just with your eyes. So what I want to transition to is, I want to do reflow really quick. Okay, so when you are testing reflow, you want to turn off WebAIM, and you want to make your screen 400% or higher. But 400% is the web accessibility guideline level that you should start testing at. And then you just make sure that your WordPress site scrolls and is reachable via reflow. And this particular website isn't. So I scroll and I move around, and at 400%, it just locks in place. It's not going anywhere. If you have that problem with your website, which you really shouldn't because the UW theme is built for reflow, then you come into WhiskWeb, you contact WhiskWeb, and we can help you. Okay? So any questions about how to magnify your screen? Okay. So next we're going to bring it back on down to 100%. And then we're going to grab the edge of our screen and squish it. Squish our browser down. And if you...
Because I have a flow up there, up here.
Yeah, and so elements are crashing into each other. You see how some of that text is underneath. Like it's not, and then like you have menus frozen. It's not reflowing properly. You need to be able to get to all the content. It is just that simple.
Is this a real website?
Yeah, I just randomly searched for a taco
It's not a
place.
It's not on purpose to show up.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that one actually had good accessibility practices. Like they had done automated testing, they just hadn't done this manual testing, which is not something everyone knows how to do. But it's actually very easy in its individual steps. It's easy. It's just once you identify something is wrong, then fixing it, we will help you fix it. Okay, so the next piece, so this is the responsive design. It's the same thing as reflow with magnification. You want to make sure you can get to all the content, okay? Okay, so the last thing we're going to do before we break into our activity is tab testing. So what you do is you take the mouse or the trackpad and you set it aside. Don't touch it. Okay, put a piece of paper over it, whatever you have to do, because it is really hard not to navigate via your touchpad. You know, it takes some getting used to. But you want to start at the top of the website. So I'm just gonna refresh so that we're at the top, right? I'm gonna set my mouse aside. And then I'm going to hit the tab key. That's really it. You're hitting the tab key and you're tabbing through the website. And you're making sure that nothing is missed and that you're tabbing to all the content in your web page in order. And if anything is missed, then you have a problem where content isn't showing up in the tab order. Your WordPress themes, the UW theme, the wonderful thing about the UW theme, and there's so many things, but like accessibility is built into the UW theme. Someone has taken the time out to make sure that your theme is as accessible as it can be. And what you have to do is make sure that the content that you put in to those theme components, the little modules in WordPress, you have to make sure that that stuff is accessible and that you didn't break anything unintentionally by like putting in, you know, they've made this theme accessible and then I put in content where I don't have headings, or, you know, my lists are made with little stars instead of like an actual bulleted list. So tabbing through and making sure that all the content is there is really important, and that focus, that you can see what the cursor is focusing on. This website was not keyboard tested, so I can't see where it's going. It is skipping component pieces. So there's a pretty solid example of what not to do.
Tabbing only goes from
The navigation.
Yep, it
Yeah.
doesn't, never goes in the content.
Right. And it is going in there, but it's skipping things and you can't see where it's going. So the only way I know it's going, anywhere, is because we do get down to the page. So it's just like, that's why we keyboard test and we tab test. And the folks who built the EW theme, they keyboard tested when they were building EW. Okay, so we have gotten through. Okay, so real quickly, cool. Contrast testing. So when you are doing contrast testing, what that is it's your automated testing. You go to the contrast tab in WebAIM, and it will identify any low contrast content. So when you click on the errors, it's identified that the white with the green background of that button isn't high contrast enough so that everyone can see it. So what contrast is it's the relationship between the foreground color, which is the text color, the background color, which is the green of that button, and the size of the text. If that relationship doesn't fall within a certain guideline amount, which is like, it's a ratio. I'm not going to confuse you with it, but the point, because it's just more than you need to know. But the point is that your text size, the foreground color, and the background color all need to play well together. And WebAIM's wave tool can tell you whether it is, and can identify anything that has too low a contrast. And then you go in and you change your button color to be darker, is what you would do. Or you change your text color to be black instead of white, for example. Jenna, please go ahead.
I'm just curious, does it also test for colorblind?
So the contrast test is specifically for color blindness as well as low vision. And the nice thing about this testing that we're doing and these guidelines that you're learning about is it crosses multiple spectrums of disabilities. And people don't have necessarily just one disability. Often they have a spectrum of them. And this crosses the spectrum of need. Okay, so I'm going to skip that video because we did keyboard testing. And I think we're going to go straight into our word practice because we, the screen reader testing, I think, the screen reader testing I think we should do with our word practice. So if you go into the folder I made, there is the sample Word doc. Sample Word doc down here. So people have made versions, that's fine. So if you can download the doc on your computer and use that for your practice space, that would be really helpful. What I'd like for us to do is that for 10 minutes, if you can break into groups of 3, use this checklist and pop quiz. What is the first thing you do when you're going to accessibility test anything? What is the first thing you do? You don't do manual first, you do? Okay, and when you're in a platform like Microsoft products, you're not going to use WebAIM Wave. You're going to use the native product, the accessibility tool that they have, because they know their software, they've built a better product. So you look for the accessibility checker, okay? You're going to run into this in real life. So I'm going to challenge you to look for the checker, okay? Okay, so 10 minutes. We're gonna meet back up at 2:32. You're gonna have to tell me what you fixed, so get in there and do some fixing. Yes, thank you. Hi. Yeah, I'm just trying to scan it with you. We have a couple of questions that came in. send any kind of follow-up information based on the feedback or the questions that people have, in order to just sort of lock in and make sure that folks have an avenue to get assistance with accessibility, because in no way are you expected to walk away from this training and be able to like do all this necessarily confidently. It's just, it's opening up the book and beginning the process. But I am your partner in crime in making this all happen. And I can answer questions and I can do things remotely. And I have a Zoom room, which is an online web conferencing room where you can pop in and out. We're going to be doing open labs. So we're setting up a structure, but your demand and your need is dictating how much of that centrally funded structure we can provide campus. Okay? Yes.
One quick comment on something that came up during the break. As a reminder to folks who might be using the UW theme and or RiskWeb, and WordPress in general, I think, when you're creating pages in there, whatever you set as a page title will automatically become your H1.
Oh, thank you, Jenna. So what Jenna said was that in your UW theme and WordPress, that whatever you set as your page title automatically becomes your H1. Thank you, Jenna. I also want to, I just want to tell you that now that you have experienced remediation or fixing accessibility issues in a Word document setting, which is, I think as easy as it gets in terms of like the software that has put the forethought in allowing for you to structure your content, then you might want to think about PDF. So you've created a Word doc and maybe you want to put it online. If you want to put it online as a read-only document, that works just as well as a PDF. If it's Word only and you set it to an authorized user versus using a password, that is more difficult to hack. Like you can, just as much as a PDF. It's like posting a PDF. If you make a Word doc read only via a password, it's too easy to hack. So you can do that. If you're dealing with like, InDesign documents or whatever, and you want to transfer those things to PDF, we are going to be doing a Word to PDF training in May. And then if there is demand for it, please tell me, because I'm trying to figure that out. We also can get in PubCom, which is the makers of this resource, and they are deep dive InDesign users. They can come in and do trainings for InDesign to PDF accessibility, and they are the masters. Okay, so what? Oh, go ahead.
We were working together. So he has a Windows and I have a Mac, and we saw differences. How the access. Well, first, where to find it, and then second, in the results. So there are things that there's one thing in particular I didn't have a report on, is the contrast of the color.
Yes.
So it doesn't tell me that.
Yes.
And then the pictures, he has the name of image.gif, but mine is called picture 3 and picture 4. So that's different also.
Yes.
And then if we want to fix the alt text, so on Windows, you just right click on the picture and alt text is one of the entry. For me, at the click, it can go in the picture properties, and one of the tabs is the alt text. So it's inconsistent between the two.
Yep. So the operating system. So some of the observations that was made here today was that the Microsoft platforms across operating systems are a little bit different. And you have to find, agnostic of what platform you're using, where these accessibility areas are. And that is really the complicated part. Keeping in mind how to structure your content, that will become like second nature. And really, these are things that are not like foreign or beyond like the types of things you may have needed to do in the past anyways. But finding it in the software is more difficult. The other piece that was a great observation was that, hey, there isn't WebAIM contrast testing here, but your accessibility checker will check contrast. And if it's not catching the contrast, that's feedback from Microsoft, so that's interesting. So when you ran the accessibility checker, did folks get a contrast error in their content? Because I set up a contrast issue right here at that second paragraph.
So on the Mac, it didn't show. It's on my Mac.
Interesting. Okay. So all the more reason not to rely on automated testing, because Why on earth wouldn't that show up? That shows up in other automated testing tools. And Microsoft is updating their products all the time, just like any other vendor. You have to rely on yourself. You can't rely on one individual tool. You are the smartest possible tool that you have at your disposal. And that's why we included the checklist that's agnostic of platform. And then we have this hopefully helpful little cheat sheet of how to get the things within Word and PowerPoint. But I wanted to see if you could do some of these things yourself, because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you'll need to. So can some people call out, what are the things that you changed with your Word doc? How did you fix the accessibility?
Headers.
Headers, yeah. What headers did you put in? How many did you end up doing?
2. One, the title for the sample document, and then.
So you did headers, you did H1 and H2s? Okay. Who else? What else did you do? Yep. That's great. Did anyone find the edit alt text? It sounds like Cliff and Jean did, but did anyone else? Yep. Okay. You were able to edit alt text. What is the form, like what do you write for alt text? What's the formula for writing alt text? Can you tell me?
Yes, it was the A and the B. So A, describe the picture, and then B, place it in context. So why is it important that it is?
Yeah, why is it there? That's wonderful. Thank you. Let's see here. What else? Did anyone make?
Different one. It has two parts. One I have to go back to it. The one that says title.
So the alt.
One that says title and one that says description.
Yes. Okay. So depending on the software that you're in, you may have multiple fields for alt text. Yeah. Always use description field. You can also place it in title. It won't repeat. But if you're like, I don't remember which one I'm supposed to use, then put it in both. But the description field is what reads. Why is it like that? Who knows? It's like goofy platforms do goofy things, but you know that you have a job to do. And you're like, I'm going to get this technology to do what I need it to do. Okay. All right, great. Alt text. What about this infographic? What did folks do for the infographic? What did you guys do for the infographic?
So it told us what the word was. Oh, actually, it didn't show me or show on me. It didn't show on my Mac, but it showed on his Windows. That there is what was it floating?
Inline.
Inline. It says it's not inline, and it said that for both pictures.
Okay. And that came up in your accessibility.
No, it didn't come up for me.
Okay.
It only came up on his computer.
So you got different results,
yeah.
PC versus Mac.
So inline simply means that the default when you paste a picture, it's like a word on the text, right?
Okay.
So it is in a format that kind of float and the text wraps around.
Well, I'm wondering,
that's how it is now.
Like Deb or Lisa, could you guys tell me, did you do anything with the infographic in your document? Okay, that's fine. Who got to the infographic? Can you go ahead?
What version of that? Like it's gonna be about.
Yeah, I have it's version 16.16.8.
Yeah, and I think like it's important to understand that these different platforms are going to serve up different things, and not to worry about the noise, but to focus on the goals which are in the checklist, because it's going to serve up some things that may not matter or apply. The inline dictates the layout and where it is located in relationship to the text. But separate from that, being able to characterize your infographics using descriptions that's in your caption or in your legend or your summary. So the sum images such as this content right there is that caption content or that legend content, and having that in relation to the image is what's important. But how do you do that? Well, you do that by naming the figure. So this was a little bit of a got you or a challenge. you would, in the alt text, name the figure, like figure 1.2, whatever, if it's the first figure, then figure 1. And then in your caption, the way that you relate, because remember, we're thinking to ourselves, what is this thing that I'm building? What does it do? And am I communicating that to my users? And what is its relation to everything around it? Your caption and your image have a parent-child relationship. And so in the alt text, you put figure 1, and in your caption, you put figure 1. So that the user knows that that caption is the descriptor for the image. And in the alternative text, you would say, figure 1 has, screen reader types and the quantities of use. See details in the caption or such and so below or next to, depending on where it is.
Sandy, before we jump into I ask a question.
Yeah, please. Thanks for remembering to, yeah.
So do screen readers also read cut lines? And should all text include names, dates, and locations that are already a part of a cut line?
Cut line.
Caption.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the captions do read in HTML. There's a caption tag, or I want to say that there's a caption tag. But but any content that is there is read by the screen reader, as long as it's not text as image, which you never want to do. Your text should be text. The problem is its relation to the content. So you just want to make sure that you create a parent-child relationship between the image and its caption or cut line by labeling which one it is.
One more.
Yes.
How do I make non-hyperlinked text part of the tab order of a page?
You do not. That is an awesome question. So the question was, how do you make non-linked or non-button text part of the tab order? You do not. You do not want to do that because tab order is just for active elements. So we are running over time as far as the Open Lab goes, but I did want you to get the opportunity to experience a screen reader.
10, 12, 18, table cell, sample workshop page 1 content.
Okay.
Not in a table cell. Not in a table cell. Not in a table. Minimize move. Text. Canteen no context. Text. 4. Canteen menu. Madison. Canteen menu. Not in a links. Not in a table cell. Canteen menu. Address and search bar edit as auto to Canteen Madison search suggestion. Not in a table cell. No.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get into the web page.
Landmark navigation, landmark list with info link.
There we go. Okay. So when you're tabbing through content, that is going to be your link text and your button text. When you're keyboard testing, you should be tabbing through all those links and buttons, and you should see that that is happening just as we tested before. But if you can't tell where the cursor is, then that means that the focus is lost. And that is an accessibility error. And if you find that to happen on your website, you would work with Web to figure out how to fix that. It shouldn't happen with UW theme, just an FYI. If it happens with UW theme, then tell us right away, because we have handled our focus in CSS so that you can see where everything goes.
List with 2 items, contact, parking link, catering link.
So that sound that you're hearing, that is the screen reader reading catering link. It's reading the contents of the page. So when I just downloaded NVDA and turned it on, and it reads, and it's generally very easy, and you just tab through your content. I am a voiceover user. So whether I'm using it for work or I'm using it for personal reasons, screen readers are great for helping you focus. So if I'm feeling stressed or I have a lot of pain in my back that day, I'll kick on voiceover with Control F5 and run my screen reader that way. And I'll use Control Alt, NVDA, which I don't use on a regular basis. It has different gestures, which is why I sent the instruction link for NVDA. But for VoiceOver, you would use Control-Alt plus arrows to navigate through the static content. That's called reading order. So when users navigate using audio data, they navigate multiple ways, but definitely navigate via tab order, which is all the active elements on the page, and they navigate via reading order to get to the static content, the things that they just want to read. And so that's what it sounds like. It sounds like navigation landmark list, and then it tells you the number of items. There's all that characterizing relationship, contextual content around the data, and that's what you are feeding the screen reader, and you're feeding the Braille display, which is a keyboard that pops Braille pins up so people can read it even if they can't see. That content gets delivered and served up by you because you are putting your headings in, you're using plain language so that people can understand what you're saying, you're putting your content in lists so that it's scannable both audio and visually, and you're making unique link and button text so people know where they're going. So these are the things that you do in order for the HTML to hold the data necessary in order for folks like me to run a screen reader and to understand everything that I'm seeing and hearing. Does that help? Okay, so we're going to break into Open Lab. You're welcome to stay or you're welcome to leave, but we are going to do that for 10 minutes. And we also have a lab schedule that, Matt, if you don't mind talking about our training and our lab schedule coming up.
So just, and also with the fact that the stream is going to end here as well, I will just, whoa, Nelly, how do I turn this guy off? How do I turn the screen reader off?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Here, take that there.
Actually, I have a